The U.S. is still working to figure out the head, or if the head of the ISIS terror group was hit by an American airstrike over the weekend. Iraqi news reports say yes, but so far U.S. intelligence cannot confirm it. NBC's chief foreign correspondent Richard Engel has more.
Some Iraqi officials and media, citing unnamed sources allegedly close to ISIS, claim that the group's leader, Abu Bakr al-Baghdadi, the man who calls himself the Caliph of the Islamic State, was injured by an American airstrike here in Iraq over the weekend. However, Iraqi officials we've spoken to say they're aware of those reports but cannot confirm them. If it's true that Baghdadi was injured or even killed, it would be an enormous blow to the group. Baghdadi is the man who took al-Qaeda in Iraq and built it into what ISIS is today, a large group that controls enormous swaths of Iraq and Syria. However, we cannot verify these reports and are treating them with a deal of skepticism.
That was Richard Engel reporting. Meanwhile, the fight against ISIS continues across a broad stretch of Iraq and Syria, but President Obama is hoping a new influx of U.S. troops could help turn the tide there. He announced that the U.S. will send another 1,500 troops to help train Iraqi forces to take on the Islamic militants. But this morning, President Obama said again that the U.S. would leave the ground combat to the Iraqis.
We can provide close air support, we can provide logistics and intelligence, but ultimately they're the ones who are going to have to fight to push ISIL out of some of these areas that they've taken over.
Joining me now, Gayle Lemmon, a deputy director with the Council on Foreign Relations. Gayle, nice to see you. Right out of the gates, very simply, I want to ask you about this decision to add to the U.S. troop presence in Iraq. Is this enough to accomplish the latest mission there?
I think the question has been from the start, exactly how many forces do you send and what exactly is the mission? You know, there are people who had been pushing for a long time to get involved in the Syrian civil war, and it wasn't until ISIS made real gains in Iraq that we saw the United States military involvement really escalate. And I think the question now is, who are the ground troops? Are they going to be Iraqi forces trained by the U.S.? On the Syria side, what about that $500 million to train and equip, which actually hasn't gotten started? So Syrian boots on the ground tell us and tell a lot of folks that they are eager to go, but that issue has not actually been pushed forward. And in the meantime, the idea of U.S. advisors really moving into different parts of Iraq and doubling to about 3,000, I think, is going to do something in terms of helping support the Iraqi forces and getting them some of the logistics and advisement and help and support that they need. But the question is, what is the actual mission? Is it to go after ISIS in Iraq? Is it to go after ISIS in Syria? And what does degrade and destroy really mean?
And then, Gayle, more broadly, I want to ask you about al-Baghdadi right now. This, of course, is the leader of ISIS. There are mixed reports about whether he was wounded, killed, or whatever may have happened to him. Regardless of that, give us an understanding about how important his role is, or ultimately, even without al-Baghdadi, there would just be another person to fill that void.
Well, I think he was the little seen and often felt presence in terms of being the architect that created the ISIS that we now know, in terms of not just taking territory, but holding it and governing from it, and really establishing this idea of a caliphate that a lot of people from Egypt to Libya just this weekend have found very attractive. You can kill a leader, and I do think that, as Richard Engel said, it would be a huge blow if he's injured or killed, but you cannot slay an idea, and I think that is the real challenge that you face going forward. You know, the issue has always been who is the real opponent of the American forces in this fight, and of course it's ISIS in Iraq, but there's always the question of the regime, which we said in 2011 must go.
Gayle Lemmon with the Council of Foreign Relations, always nice to have your expertise with us. Thank you so much.
Thank you.